September 11, 2001 began with an almost impossibly clear blue sky. It was a Tuesday primary election day in New York City, a crisp, late summer morning that promised the first hint of autumn. Across the eastern seaboard, the sky was a vast, unbroken canvas of cerulean blue, a perfect day. But this perfect beauty would become a haunting backdrop to the horror that was to come. The world was at peace, blissfully unaware that it stood on the precipice of a new and terrifying era. In just a few short hours, the very concept of a normal morning would be shattered forever. Across the eastern United States, in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania, the daily rhythm of life was in full swing. In Manhattan, the city was waking up. Subways rumbled beneath the streets carrying millions to their destinations. Yellow cabs flooded the avenues. At the World Trade Center, workers were already arriving. Traders were preparing for the opening bell on the floors of the financial firms high in the Twin Towers. At the windows on the World Restaurant atop the North Tower, breakfast service was beginning, offering diners a panoramic view of the city laid out below. In Washington, D.C., military and civilian personnel streamed into the Pentagon, the nerve center of the nation's defense. And in the quiet fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the day began as it always did, peacefully, far removed from the bustling corridors of power. At airports in Boston, Newark, and Washington, thousands boarded flights. It was a routine that felt unremarkable and, above all, safe. In 2001, air travel was different. Security was a looser, more trusting affair. Families said their goodbyes at the gate, and passengers passed through metal detectors with little more than a cursory check. On this particular morning, 4 of these flights were cross-country journeys bound for California, loaded with fuel and passengers. American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 departed from Boston's Logan Airport. American Airlines Flight 77 took off from Dulles, just outside Washington. And in Newark, United Airlines Flight 93 began its journey. The cabins slowly filled with a diverse group of people. Business travelers reviewing notes for meetings, families excited for vacations, students returning to college, and individuals simply heading home. Flight attendants performed their safety briefings, a familiar ritual for the frequent flyer. But hidden among these ordinary passengers were 19 men with a meticulously coordinated plan. They had moved through the lax security checks, armed with simple, permissible items like box cutters. They took their seats, their hearts filled with a cold resolve that was entirely alien to the unsuspecting men, women, and children around them. As the planes pushed back from the gates, 2 worlds existed in the same space. One of innocence and routine, the other of calculated, fanatical violence. One by one, the 4 jets lifted off, climbing powerfully into that perfect blue sky. For a few precious minutes, everything was normal. Pilots made their routine calls to air traffic control, reporting their altitude and course. But then, on American Flight 11, the communication abruptly stopped. On the ground, air traffic controllers stared at their screens in growing confusion and alarm. A transponder signal blinked out. A voice, unfamiliar and chilling, was heard over the radio. The carefully orchestrated normalcy of the morning was beginning to unravel. At 8:46 a.m., as the first hijacked plane veered impossibly off course and aimed for the New York City skyline, the unimaginable began. The attacks were orchestrated by 19 terrorists from the extremist group Al-Qaeda. At its helm was Osama bin Laden, a wealthy Saudi fugitive who had declared a holy war against the United States. From his base in Afghanistan, bin Laden masterminded a global terror network fueled by a radical ideology that viewed America as the primary enemy of Islam. This was not their first strike. Al-Qaeda was responsible for the 1998 bombings of US embassies in Africa and the attack on the USS Cole. But the September 11 plot, conceived by operational mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was designed on an entirely different scale to inflict mass casualties and sow terror deep within the American homeland. Each of the 19 hijackers had been carefully selected and trained. They were divided into two groups. Four of them, including the tactical leader Mohammed Atta, were chosen to be the pilots. They traveled to the United States months in advance, enrolling in flight schools from Florida to Arizona. Their curriculum was chillingly specific. They learned just enough to control a commercial airliner in the air, focusing on navigation and steering, with no intention of ever learning to land. The other 15 hijackers were the muscle. Their job was brutally simple: to storm the cockpit and subdue the passengers and crew using low-tech weapons like box cutters, exploiting the pre-9/11 assumption that a hijacking's goal was negotiation, not a suicide mission. Their goal: strike symbolic centers of American power. The targets were chosen for their immense symbolic value. Two planes targeted the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers representing America's economic dominance. One plane targeted the Pentagon, the nerve center of the United States military. The fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was intended for another high-profile location in Washington, D.C. Intelligence strongly suggests it was aimed at either the US Capitol building, the seat of American democracy, or the White House, the home of its president. The plan was to decapitate the country's economic, military, and political leadership in a single coordinated blow. The planning took years. It was meticulous, secretive, and deadly. The plot, codenamed the Plains Operation, saw the hijackers live quietly in American suburbs. They obtained driver's licenses, opened bank accounts, and took cross-country flights to observe in-flight procedures and test airport security, which was tragically unprepared for such a threat. In the final days, they wired surplus funds back to Al-Qaeda and made their final preparations. They were hiding in plain sight, using the very freedoms of the society they aimed to destroy to orchestrate its darkest day. On a crystal clear Tuesday morning, the rhythm of New York City was shattered. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 en route from Boston to Los Angeles, appeared in the sky over Lower Manhattan, flying dangerously low and fast. On board were 81 passengers, 11 crew members, and 5 hijackers. For the 16,400 people who had already arrived for work at the World Trade Center, the day was just beginning. For those on Flight 11 and for thousands in the tower below, it was about to end. Traveling at an estimated 466 miles per hour, the aircraft slammed into the northern face of the North Tower between the 93rd and 99th floors. The impact was catastrophic. The plane, loaded with nearly 10,000 gallons of jet fuel, effectively became an incendiary missile. The collision severed steel support columns and obliterated entire floors, instantly killing hundreds. The atomized jet fuel ignited into a massive fireball that erupted from the building, reaching temperatures of over 1000 degrees Celsius. For everyone on the floors at and above the point of impact, all escape routes, every stairwell, every elevator were instantly destroyed or rendered impassable by fire and smoke. They were trapped. On the streets below, a sound like a thunderclap ripped through the morning quiet. New Yorkers watched in disbelief as a gaping fiery wound appeared on the iconic skyscraper. Debris and office paper rained down, a surreal confetti of destruction. The initial confusion was rampant. News reports speculated a small private plane had accidentally crashed. But first responders racing to the scene knew it was far worse. FDNY Battalion Chief Joseph Pfeiffer was the first chief to arrive, establishing a command post in the North Tower's lobby. Looking up into the building's core, he saw only fire and devastation, an incident beyond any conceivable training scenario. For 17 minutes, the world watched the North Tower burn, gripped by a singular, horrifying event. In the adjacent South Tower, a port authority announcement advised occupants to remain in their offices, assuring them the building was secure. It was a directive many would thankfully ignore, starting their own evacuation. In those brief moments, there was still a desperate collective hope that this was a terrible but isolated accident. But at 9:03 a.m., that hope was vaporized. United Airlines Flight 175 appeared in the sky, banked sharply, and plunged into the South Tower. The second impact, witnessed live by millions on television, left no doubt this was not an accident. This was a calculated, coordinated terrorist attack. The day's true unimaginable horror was only just beginning to unfold. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 struck the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The Pentagon, the headquarters of the US Department of Defense, was a symbol of American military might. The attack killed 125 people inside the building, along with all 64 passengers and crew on the plane. The nation realized it was under siege, but the full scale of the devastation was still unfolding. United Airlines Flight 93 took off from Newark, New Jersey, heading for San Francisco. Passengers soon realized their plane had been hijacked. In a courageous act of defiance, passengers attempted to storm the cockpit. The plane ultimately crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing everyone aboard. Yet, their actions prevented another potential attack on a high-profile target, becoming a symbol of heroism and sacrifice. As fires raged and structural damage worsened, the South Tower collapsed at 9:59 a.m. followed by the North Tower at 10:28 a.m. The collapses sent billions of tons of debris into the streets of Manhattan. Thousands of civilians and first responders perished. The attacks became a defining moment in global history, symbolizing both vulnerability and resilience. In the aftermath, New York City, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania were plunged into chaos. Emergency services, firefighters, and police conducted massive rescue operations. Air traffic across the U.S. was grounded for the first time in history. The nation mourned, the world stood united in shock. The 9/11 attacks did not just affect America. Global politics shifted, anti-terrorism laws were strengthened, the war on terror began, leading to conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, and beyond. Airports, security protocols, and intelligence operations worldwide were forever changed. The attack revealed vulnerabilities in modern society, illustrating that a few individuals could disrupt entire nations. Nearly 3,000 people died that day. The memory of 9/11 continues to resonate through memorials, annual ceremonies, and the stories of those who sacrificed everything to save others. The attacks changed the world's approach to security, terrorism, and global cooperation. 9/11 serves as a reminder of human vulnerability, courage, and resilience, forever etched into history.